What's going on, guys? Kiger here. Today we're doing an updated guide on Ranger, talking about combos, fairies, wills, everything you need to succeed with the Ranger class, letting you know what pairs best with it, how to use it in PvP or PvE. Let's jump into it. Just as a reminder, I am sponsored by Swift Energy, link down below with my code Kiger, get 25% off. I use it, I like it. They have regular flavors as well as meme gamer flavors, which will really help me out if you try them out. Let's jump into it. Alright, so for Ranger, talking about class advancement first, we're going to go for T4, T4, swap over to our other class, T4, T4, and then come back to do T5s. Now, as far as which one to go first, Marksman T4 is going to be the one to go after for both if you're doing Marksman or Windwalker, Wind Chaser. As we see here, attack, pierce rate, this is going to be great. Both sides are damage dealers. This is going to be amazing. And what's just nice to have is this defense protection rate. This isn't really going to matter until late game. Well, late mid game, where people are getting that pierce and things going on. But this is a nice one to have on your tree. Go do your other T4s and then come back. We talk about Marksman, defense and crit, or Wind Chaser, attack and tenacity. This is pretty tough because crit is going to be very, very important. But I think this is actually going to go down the line of the names where Marksman is going to go for the crit because they have their crit steroid skill, which generally they're going to need these flat numbers so their percentages matter for that. And then for Wind Chaser, a lot of it is tricky, try to stay alive tactics, but you're also going to get some damage. So attack and tenacity, pretty good for that. But you can't really go wrong with either. Now, talking about the skills themselves, a couple things are going to be very, very important. If we talk about Marksman, the left side, their skills themselves, as we see over here, the first two skills are their primary damage skills, where the third skill is the steroid and the fourth skill is like an ultimate effectively. Right here is just flat base damage. Right here is crit damage, so either all or nothing. Cooldown, which is going to be a mandatory thing to go after, and then crit damage, which, as I said, you either get it or you don't. So the very first thing you're going to be going after is Cloud Piercing. Get that cooldown down for Never Miss, especially if you increase, I believe it's your glove, so that you can take this even further to get more of a cooldown on it is going to be very, very impressive. Then Toxic Arrow right here for flat bonus damage is very powerful, but this is kind of a toss-up off of what you want to go after. If you want more sustained damage based on people's tenacity and such, getting the Vortex Arrow Deepen skill is very good. If you want to go for the one-shot, then getting Deadly Arrows is the most damage you can get, because as we see, up here is plus 700, down here is plus 2500. So obviously you're getting a big boost right there. As far as Wind Chaser, it's a very interesting class because everything is centered around Shifting Bolt, which all three of the other skills change what Shifting Bolt does. And as we see here, just bonus skill damage, good to have. Bonus skill damage, good to have. Bonus crit damage, now we're getting a little dicey. And then over here is percent chance to get 50% more healing, which is kind of whatever. At max, it's 10% for 50% more healing. Obviously, you can take it a little bit higher, so it'd be, what, 17%? At maxed Spirit Infusion. Now, ideally, you're going to want to max out the Shifting Bolt Deepen skill for that flat damage. Then Break Free. This is going to be very, very powerful. Then you can kind of go from there depending on the builds we talk about in a moment. Now let's go over to the fairies, talk about them, talk about the fairies themselves, talk about the wheels and cores. Then we'll go over to the training dummy, talk about our skill setup and what we're trying to do in combos. So, time for the normal disclaimer. Holy is the best in PvP. It is always going to be that way, especially both of these routes are damage dealers, so it's going to be good for both. If you're going for Marksman, Fire, undisputed, number one element to go after, whereas Wind Chaser, Wind or Fire are both good options. I lean more towards Wind, as we'll talk about how the Shifting Bolt things work in a moment. Now, as far as wills and the cores and generations, you're going to want Slaughter on both of these, and then Mantra is very good for PvE if you're doing these what we call fairy dancing, which you swap different fairy teams to get Mantra on everything, keep it going. That's very powerful in PvE. Fierce Attack is also a pretty good substitute as far as PvP. If you are doing Marksman, having Rigidity so you can survive one hit is very nice to have, because you're a long range sniper, and once you're in melee, you're pretty much dead. If you can take one hit, that 10 times your survivability, because you can take the hit, use 1 or 2 dashes to try to get out of there, whereas Wind Chaser has 3 dashes where they're more likely to get out, where they could actually do very well with something like Nightmare if they would like to play that way, where if you do second skill, first skill, it's an immobilize, which Nightmare will increase that duration, or if you do first skill, second skill, and then also if you do fourth skill, second skill, it's a knock-up, which you can't really increase knock-up, or at least when you increase knock-up, it's not as noticeable. So you kind of have to decide from there. But generally, I would go for Slaughter and Rigidity for PvP. Now, as far as the generations, Break Free, Break Free, Break Free on both of them, I think are very, very powerful. You do have the option if you're doing Wind Chaser. Soul Hunt will be decent, obviously not as good. And really, those feel like the only really two options. Unless you go really deep into Fighting Will, which I do not recommend. But this is an option if you're doing Wind Chaser. Fighting Will on Wind Chaser, Fighting Will Strike, with Wind Echo, cooldown on cooldown on cooldown. There is some diminishing returns on cooldown, but if you want to go that direction and be an annoying character, that is a way to go. Now let's go over to the training dummy.